Lonely CEO heard "May we have your leftovers" from twin little girls. Then he saw the eyes that broke him. "Excuse me, sir, your duck confit," the waiter announced, setting down the elegantly plated dish on the linen-covered table. Daniel Whitmore glanced up, nodded politely, and then looked away, eyes drawn to the sidewalk beyond the iron railing. He sat alone on the outdoor terrace of Le Jardin Bleu, a fine dining restaurant tucked between high-end boutiques and steel-glass towers in downtown Chicago. Though the dining room shimmered with chandeliers and quiet conversations, Daniel preferred the fresh air and distant sounds of the city. Here, he could breathe. A half-read journal rested beside his wine glass, the pages fluttering in the breeze. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, but it could not conceal the quiet loneliness that clung to him. Just as he lifted his fork, "May we have your leftovers?" The voice was soft, childlike, almost lost in the hum of traffic and sidewalk chatter. He turned. Beyond the terrace fence stood two little girls, identical, maybe 3 years old, their blonde curls matted, cheeks smudged with dirt. Their dresses hung loosely, clearly handed down and worn. One held the other's hand tightly, the smaller clutching a threadbare cloth bunny. Before he could move, a waiter stormed over. "Hey, get out of here," he barked. "This is not a place for beggars." Daniel stood up. "Stop," he said firmly. The waiter halted, startled. Daniel stepped toward the fence, kneeling. "What did you say, sweetheart?" The older girl hesitated. "You have food, and we are hungry. We thought maybe you were done." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "I was just about to eat," he said gently. "But I would love to share it with you." He opened the terraced gate. The waiter looked ready to protest, but one look from Daniel silenced him. The girls stepped inside slowly, eyes wide with both fear and wonder. Daniel pulled out a chair and helped them up. He asked for 2 extra plates. Soon the confit was divided into 3 portions. The girls ate carefully, silently, as if unsure if it would be taken away at any moment. "What are your names?" Daniel asked. "Emma," said one. "Ellie," said the other. "Beautiful names," he said, smiling. "Do you live nearby?" They nodded, unsure. Then came running footsteps from down the sidewalk. A young woman appeared, disheveled, breathless. Her blonde ponytail was loose, her jeans frayed at the knees. Her eyes searched the terrace frantically until she saw them, and when Daniel saw her, he froze. Blue-gray eyes met his. Exhausted, alert, but alive. There was weariness in them, but behind it an unmistakable fire, resilience. She reached them in seconds. "I am so sorry," she gasped, pulling the girls close. "They should not—" "They are okay," Daniel said calmly. "They were hungry, that is all." "I have told them not to—" She trailed off, glancing at the table. "Did they ask?" "They did," he said softly. "Girls, we are sorry, Mommy," Ellie said. "But he said yes." The woman knelt, hugging them tightly. "I know, baby." Daniel noticed her hands. Calloused, worn. They looked like they had worked harder than anyone their age should. He reached into his coat pocket and held out a small card. "My name is Daniel Whitmore," he said. "If you ever need anything, especially work, call me." She looked at the card but did not take it. "I do not need charity," she said, steady and proud. "This is not charity," Daniel said, placing the card on the table. "It is just a door, in case you want to knock." Their eyes met again. He saw it then, the weight she carried and the strength that kept her standing beneath it. She finally took the card, nodded once, and led the girls away, holding their hands like lifelines. Daniel watched them until they turned the corner. The duck confit sat untouched. But for the first time in a long while, the silence around him did not feel empty. It felt possible. The small apartment on the south side of Chicago was dim and stifling, a second-hand fan humming in the corner, trying and failing to fight off the July heat. Claire Harper sat on the floor beside a mattress shared by her twin daughters, a wet cloth on each of their foreheads. Emma and Ellie had been running fevers since the night before. Claire had skipped her shift at the diner to stay home, knowing full well it might cost her the job. And it did. The text had come mid-morning. "We've had to make cuts. Thank you for your time." Just like that. No warning, no apologies. Claire stared at her phone, hands trembling. Rent was due in 8 days. Her last paycheck had already gone to groceries and overdue utility bills. The bank account was nearly dry. A soft cough from the mattress pulled her back. "Mommy?" Ellie whimpered. "I'm right here, sweetheart," Claire whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. She rose, moving to the tiny closet where she kept the laundry. She dug through the pile, searching for the last clean shirt she had not yet washed. As she shook it out, something small and stiff fluttered to the floor. A business card. It landed face up. Daniel Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Design and Innovation 18. A phone number was printed below in clean, minimalist font. Claire froze. She had not thought about that night in weeks. The restaurant, the food, the man with sad eyes and quiet kindness. She had told herself she would not reach out, that pride mattered more. Then she saw something else fall from the shirt pocket, a scrap of paper, torn from one of the girls' coloring books, a child's drawing, a man in a suit holding hands with 2 little girls. Above the stick figures, in purple crayon, it read, "Kind Uncle." Claire's breath caught. Behind her, Emma stirred. Her voice was weak but clear. "Mom, call the nice man." Claire turned, blinking back tears. "What, baby?" Emma's eyes fluttered half open. "Call him. He had food, and he was kind." Claire sat down heavily on the edge of the mattress, the card clutched in one hand, the drawing in the other. She had nothing left to lose. Pride could not feed her daughters. Dignity would not pay the heating bill come winter. Her fingers hovered over the phone. Then she typed, "Hi, this is Claire, from the restaurant. You once said to call if I ever needed work. I do. Even something small, cleaning, anything." She hesitated, then hit send. Seconds passed. Then her phone buzzed. Daniel Whitmore. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., Whitmore HQ. Ask for me directly. Claire stared at the message. The cool professionalism of it, the immediacy. She blinked once, twice, then burst into tears. She buried her face in her hands, muffling the sobs so the girls would not wake. This time, the tears were not from fear. They were from something else entirely. Hope. The next morning she rose before dawn. The girls' fevers had broken. She bathed them quickly, fed them toast, then asked a neighbor to watch them for the day. It was not ideal, but nothing in her life had been ideal for a long time. She pulled out the only clean blouse she had left, tucked it into faded slacks, and wrapped her hair into a neat bun. No makeup, no pretense, just a mother on a mission. When she arrived at Whitmore HQ, an all-glass building gleaming in the heart of downtown, her reflection stared back at her from every surface. She almost turned around. She almost ran. Then she remembered Emma's voice. "Call him." She stepped inside. At the front desk, the receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Claire held her head high. "I am here to see Daniel Whitmore. He is expecting me." A moment's pause. Then, "Go right up, top floor." Claire took the elevator with shaking knees. But as the doors opened and the sunlight spilled into the marble-floored hallway, she straightened her back. She was not here to beg. She was here to build. Daniel stood waiting near his office door. No suit today, just a rolled-up shirt and slacks, sleeves dusted with sawdust, as if he had been in a workshop. He gave a small nod. "Claire, Mr. Whitmore," she replied quietly. "Come in," he said. "Let's talk about work." And just like that, something shifted again. Not dramatic, not magical, but real. An open door, just as he had promised. Claire's first day in the logistics department at Whitmore Design began quietly. The warehouse hummed with steady work, scanning, labeling, organizing. But no one paid her much attention. That was fine. Claire was used to blending in. She followed directions, stocked boxes, and kept her head down. The work was physical, repetitive, but honest. It let her pick up the girls from daycare before sundown and serve a warm dinner. That was enough. During her first break, she found a quiet corner in the back office. From her canvas bag, she pulled out flattened cardboard scraps from old packaging. They came everywhere with her, leftovers from nights crafting with her daughters. She laid them out with a small tin of markers, glue, and blunt scissors. Her hands moved automatically. She drew simple figures: round heads, stick arms, expressive eyes, one smiling, one frowning, one angry, with jagged brows and wild hair. She labeled them joy, tears, storm. They were not just toys. They were tools she had made to help her daughters name what they felt. If they could name it, they could tame it. She was focused, whispering the familiar mantra to herself when she heard a voice. "You drew those?" She turned, startled. Daniel stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, curious but not unkind. "Oh, sorry. I was just using scrap paper. I can clean this up." He shook his head and stepped closer. "Did you make them for your kids?" Claire nodded. "They help with emotions. I used to study children's product design, a long time ago." Daniel knelt beside her and picked up one of the dolls. Tears. It had watery eyes and a crayon-drawn heart. "They're really thoughtful," he said. Claire gave a shy laugh. "They're just old boxes, but my girls think they're magic." Daniel kept looking at the doll, brushing his thumb across the cardboard. A memory surfaced. Years ago, he had donated handmade dolls to a children's hospital. One girl had wanted a pink one. He made sure it was sent. She died the night before it arrived. He never forgot the thank you letter or the photo of that doll on her empty pillow. He looked at Claire again. "You said you studied design?" She nodded. "Child-centered, mostly educational play. I never finished school. Life got complicated." Daniel paused. "What would you have made if things had gone right?" Claire gestured to the dolls. "This, but with wood, interchangeable faces, so kids could change a sad doll to a happy one, learn how feelings shift. Daniel studied storm, the angry one with thunderclouds. Could you sketch that idea?" "Just a rough draft. We're exploring a new educational product line." Claire blinked. "Really?" He smiled. "Just a sketch, no promises. But I think your cardboard magic could be something more." Claire looked at the dolls in her hands. No one had asked for her ideas in years. No one had seen her as more than a cleaner or a tired mom. "I'll think about it," she said softly. Daniel nodded and walked away. But before he turned the corner, he glanced back once at the dolls. Back in his office, he passed the design team's glass-walled floor. Mood boards, 3D models, clean sketches. Everything polished. But his thoughts were elsewhere. On crayons, on cardboard, on a mother teaching her children how to feel and survive in a world that often gave them nothing. The next evening, after the twins had fallen asleep curled around their favorite plush animals, Claire sat at the kitchen table of their tiny apartment with nothing but a pencil, a ruler, and a blank sheet of paper in front of her. She stared at it for a long time. It had been 4 years since she last sketched something real. Not doodles for her daughters. Not paper crafts or quick drawings, but a real product idea, meant to be held, used, shared, meant to make a child feel seen. Her fingers trembled. What if she was no longer good at it? What if all the things she once knew, form, function, emotion, interaction, had faded with time and struggle? Then she glanced toward the bedroom door, where a soft nightlight glowed behind it. Ellie had asked, "Will the dolls help other kids too?" Claire took a deep breath and began. First, she sketched a series of round-headed wooden figures, like simplified peg dolls. Each had swappable facial plates: happy, sad, angry, scared, calm. She added color indicators on their bases, subtle tactile cues for children who were still learning to speak. Then she drew a storage box that doubled as a stage, one side labeled, "How I Feel Now," the other, "How I Want to Feel." She forgot to be afraid. The next morning she slipped the sketch into her bag. It was not perfect. Lines were rough, shading uneven. But it was something real, hers. When she arrived at the office, she almost backed out, but at the last moment she saw Daniel stepping into the elevator alone. She called out, "Mr. Whitmore?" He turned, surprised but not displeased. "Claire, I did that sketch you mentioned. Just rough, really rough." She handed him the folded sheet, her palms clammy. Daniel opened it slowly, his expression unreadable as his eyes moved over the page. Then something shifted. He looked again, more closely this time, fingers tracing the doll's modular face, the way the expressions could change, how the design gave a child the power to name their feelings. Claire stood frozen. He looked up at her, not with the professional detachment she feared, but with something far gentler. Something deeper. "This," he began, then stopped. Claire held her breath. Daniel turned, without a word, and walked the paper into the creative department, motioning for 2 team members to follow him. Claire stood outside the glass wall, heart pounding as she watched them huddle around the sketch. One of the designers squinted at the paper, then said something that made Daniel nod. Another pointed at the "Feel Now, Feel Later" box, smiling. Claire couldn't hear their words. Then Daniel stepped back into the hallway. "Would you come in?" he asked. She blinked. "Me?" "Yes, they want to ask about your process." Claire entered slowly. It felt surreal. These were professionals, designers with degrees and salaries, and they were asking her why she chose that shade of blue for calm, why she made the sad face slightly heavier in line than the others. Afterward, when the team returned to their desks, Daniel walked with her back toward the elevator. "You really care about how kids understand themselves," he said softly. She nodded. "Sometimes. Kids can't say what they feel. These dolls can speak for them." He smiled. Not the polite smile she had seen in meetings, but something warmer, the kind of smile someone gives when they see something they forgot they needed. "I had a little girl once," he said, almost in a whisper. "Not mine, a patient at the children's hospital I used to support. I sent her a doll, but she passed before it arrived." Claire said nothing, just walked beside him. Daniel looked at her again. "I think these could help a lot of children, but first I want you to refine them with our team. On company time." Claire stopped. "Are you offering me a design role?" "A trial project," he replied. "For now, but yes, you would lead the concept." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I deserve this." "You do," he said simply, "because these aren't just toys. They connect people." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Thank you." As the elevator doors closed between them, Claire held the folder tighter to her chest. And Daniel, for the first time in a long time, did not feel alone. He had just seen something beautiful rise from cardboard and crayons, and somehow it made the world feel new again. The event was supposed to be simple, just a quiet internal gathering to celebrate the launch of a new product line. No press, no clients, just the staff, their families, and the new collection of educational toys displayed across the showroom floor. But to Claire, it felt like a world she had been locked out of for years. She hesitated as she stood at the entrance, with Emma and Ellie each clutching one of her hands. The girls wore matching sundresses, their hair tied up in little braids, faces lit with the kind of excitement only 3-year-olds could manage. Daniel spotted them instantly and came over, smiling warmly. "You made it," he said. Claire nodded, still uncertain. "You were invited," he replied, "and they've been asking about the cake since noon." He reached for the twins' hands, crouching down. "You two ready for some coloring and cupcake magic?" Ellie giggled. "Do you have purple frosting?" "I think we can make some appear." He led them toward the crafts table, where crayons, stickers, and blank character sheets waited. Claire stayed behind a moment, watching as Daniel crouched between the two girls, listening intently as they chattered and showed him how they had learned to draw happy faces. She folded her arms across her chest, her heart suddenly too full. The room around her was all laughter, clinking glasses, camera flashes. But her focus was only on that small scene, Daniel laughing as Emma showed him a glittery mess of a drawing. Ellie trying to draw Daniel himself with big eyebrows and a crooked tie. A colleague handed Claire a cup of lemonade, and she murmured a distracted thank you. "Is that your husband?" the woman asked casually. Claire flushed. "No, just someone kind." Her voice cracked slightly. "There was a time I couldn't even afford colored pencils. We used a carton from old packages to make everything." She looked down. Her hands trembled slightly around the paper cup. A few minutes later, Claire returned to the coloring table to gather her girls, but paused when she saw something new sitting beside their sketch pads, a neatly wrapped tin of brand-new art supplies. Dozens of colored markers, metallic pens, watercolors, even glitter glue. On top, a small note in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting read, "Keep drawing, little angels. D." Claire pressed a hand to her lips. She turned to look for him, but he was across the room, chatting with one of the product developers. He glanced over just once, meeting her eyes. He smiled. Nothing grand, just a soft, private smile. She blinked back tears. "Mommy," Emma shouted suddenly. "Look what we drew!" Claire bent down. The girls held up a picture with all four of them, Daniel, Claire, Ellie, and Emma, standing under a tree made of rainbow leaves. "We're best friends now," Ellie declared proudly, "and Mommy is the one who draws magic." The nearby crowd chuckled warmly. Someone nearby, a company photographer with a press pass dangling from her neck, lifted her camera. "That's a photo waiting to happen," she said. The twins posed instantly, grabbing Daniel's and Claire's hands, dragging them into the shot. Claire resisted at first, but Daniel gently touched her elbow. "Come on. First unofficial family photo?" She laughed softly. "Unofficial? For now." Click. The flash caught all four of them, Claire kneeling between her girls, one arm around each, Daniel just behind them, resting his hand lightly on Claire's shoulder. A snapshot, a flicker, but in that moment it felt like something real. Afterward, as the girls played with their new markers, Claire whispered to Daniel, "I used to believe we'd never have more than cardboard dreams." Daniel looked at her for a long time. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "cardboard holds the strongest foundations." Claire was folding laundry when her phone buzzed with a dozen notifications all at once. At first, she ignored them. It was probably the group chat from the company, or someone tagging her in pictures from the launch party. But then a friend from the shelter messaged her privately, "Are you okay? Ignore the article. It's trash." She frowned, heart sinking. She tapped the news link. The headline screamed in bold letters, "From rags to riches, struggling single mom charms lonely CEO, gold digger or love story." There was a photo, her and Daniel standing beside each other at the party, the twins smiling in front. The caption read, "Sources say she used her daughters to get close to the reclusive CEO." Claire's vision blurred. She dropped the phone. By afternoon, the article had spread across multiple gossip blogs. Comments poured in, filled with speculation, cruelty, and assumptions. Strangers called her manipulative. Some claimed she faked being poor. Others dug into her past. Old student debt eviction records. Claire did not return to work the next day. When Daniel called, she let it ring. Then he texted, "Talk to me, please." She deleted the message without reading the rest. At bedtime, Ellie fell asleep quickly, but Emma kept fidgeting under the covers. Her little fingers twisted the hem of her blanket. "Mommy?" she asked softly. Claire stroked her hair. "Yes, baby?" Emma bit her lip. "Did we do something wrong?" Claire froze. "No, never." "Then why?" Emma's voice cracked. "Why don't we go to the company anymore? Why doesn't Mr. Daniel call us? Did he stop liking us?" Claire swallowed hard, her throat tight. She tried to hold the tears back. Emma reached up, touching her mother's cheek gently. "One girl in the park today, she said you tricked Mr. Daniel because you're a gold digger." "What is that?" Claire couldn't speak. Emma's eyes filled. "Does it mean you're bad? Does it mean he doesn't want to see us again?" Claire pulled her daughter into her arms, rocking her silently, tears running down her face. The next few days passed in a blur. Claire avoided the news. She turned down every call. She told herself this would blow over, that silence was protection. But inside, she felt like everything she had slowly built was collapsing again. Not just her job, but trust. Hope. Meanwhile, Daniel sat alone in his office, the drawing of the paper doll taped to the back of his laptop screen. He had seen the article the moment it dropped. His PR team panicked, and the board of directors requested an emergency meeting. Investors whispered concerns about reputation. One of the senior advisors even suggested distancing himself publicly, but Daniel refused. Still, the words from the article echoed, louder than he expected. And when Claire did not return his messages, fear began to twist in his gut. He stayed late at the office, barely touching his food, barely sleeping. He stared at the paper doll Claire had made weeks ago, its round smile drawn with uneven crayon strokes. On the back was Emma's handwriting. Happy. He remembered that hospital room years ago, the little girl in bed, bald from chemo, clutching a doll he had bought for her. She died before she ever got to name it. And for the first time since then, he had seen something new, something real, in Claire's designs, in her daughter's, in the quiet grace of her presence. Now it felt like he was losing them. Again. He opened his phone, read the last message he sent her. "You don't have to talk. Just let me know you're okay." No reply. That night, he sat alone on the office couch, the drawing in his lap. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long, long time, Daniel cried. Not out of anger or frustration, but because silence was worse than any headline. The rain had not let up all evening. Thick, relentless sheets poured down from the sky, washing the sidewalks of Chicago clean and cold. Daniel stood in front of a weathered apartment building on the edge of a working-class neighborhood, completely drenched. He had no umbrella. In one hand, he held a small folder wrapped in plastic, a photo, and a prototype of a toy made of wood and kindness. He took a deep breath, then knocked. The door opened a crack. Claire stood in the doorway. She wore an old hoodie, her blonde hair tied back hastily. Her eyes, once guarded, now carried a quiet storm of exhaustion and pain. She said nothing. Daniel lifted the folder slightly. I just wanted to return something." Claire didn't move. He tried again, his voice shaking from both the cold and something deeper. "It's the photo, from the launch party, the four of us, smiling. You, me, and the girls." Still, she said nothing. He stepped forward an inch, not crossing the threshold. "And this is your prototype. The one with the emotion dolls. I never gave it to the marketing team. I kept it, because I knew it was more than a product. It was you. It was them." Claire blinked, her breath catching. Daniel's voice dropped lower. "I know I should have fought harder. I should have gone to the press, should have stood up when they came after you. But I was scared." She looked down, her arms folded tightly. "I was scared I'd lose everything I've built, my reputation, my company. But then I realized," his voice cracked, "I could survive losing all of that. What I couldn't survive was losing you, or Ellie, or Emma." The silence stretched between them, only broken by the steady rhythm of rain. "I do not care what people say," Daniel whispered. "I care about how Emma holds my hand when we cross the street. I care about how Ellie laughs when I try to color outside the lines. I care about how you looked at me when you thought I was just a kind stranger." Claire's hands trembled at her sides. "I know I am not their father, not by blood," he continued. "But if they'll have me, I want to be." A sob escaped her lips. She stepped forward. Daniel dropped the folder as she collapsed into his arms, the rain soaking them both. Her voice was barely audible, muffled against his chest. "I was so afraid that you'd believe what they said, that you'd stop seeing me." "I never stopped," Daniel said, holding her tighter. "I never will." They stood in the doorway for a long time, wrapped in each other, soaked in rain and the quiet hum of redemption. Inside, two small faces peeked from behind a curtain. Ellie's eyes were wide with hope. Emma clutched a stuffed bunny tight to her chest. Claire turned and whispered, "Girls, come say hello." Emma ran first, straight into Daniel's arms. Ellie followed, slower but with a grin that could light up a city block. Daniel knelt, tears mixing with raindrops on his face. "Hi, angels." Emma looked at him and asked softly, "Do you have time to draw with us again?" He smiled, voice breaking. "Forever." 6 months had passed since Daniel had knocked on Claire's door. Spring had arrived in Chicago, and with it came a quiet rhythm of joy, not loud or dramatic, but steady and real. Daniel had transformed a wing of his penthouse into something unexpected, a sunlit studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in light, and shelves brimmed with fabrics, wood, paints, and dolls stitched with handmade expressions. Above the door, a sign read, "The Emotion Dolls of Emma and Ellie." When Claire first saw it, she cried. "It's not just a space," she whispered. "It's everything I lost." Daniel touched her cheek. "I just saw what was already there." Claire now worked daily in that studio, designing, drawing, carving. Her dream had returned, not as a fantasy, but as her job, her purpose. Daniel helped with meetings, logistics, outreach, but the soul of the work was always hers and the girls. The emotion doll kits caught on. A therapist in New York made a video using them with young clients. This toy gives children a voice when feelings are too big for words. Orders followed. One quiet afternoon, Claire sat by the window as rain traced patterns on the glass. Her laptop pinged. A school district in Oregon had ordered 300 kits. She turned to Daniel, who was coloring on the floor with Emma and Ellie. "They chose us," she said. He smiled. "Of course they did." Later that week, they held a small gathering at the studio, parents, teachers, and friends. Claire stood before them, nervous but glowing. "I used to believe I had failed," she said, "as a student, as a mom. I thought if something broke you, that was the end." She looked at Daniel. "But maybe some things have to break to grow stronger." A pause. "And sometimes someone sees value in what others throw away." He looks at a scrap of cardboard and says, "There's magic here. That's when you start to believe again." Applause filled the room. Emma and Ellie clapped loudest. That night, the four of them curled up on the couch, a blanket draped over them, popcorn half-eaten, and crayons scattered on the coffee table. Daniel was trying to sketch a new doll emotion, a wild-eyed stick figure with stars shooting from its head. Claire laughed. "What is that?" "Extreme joy," Daniel grinned. "Or maybe happiness overload?" Emma chimed in with a Vietnamese phrase, and Claire translated. She said, "Happiness exploding." Daniel nodded. "Exactly how this feels." Moments later, the girls rushed in, holding one of Claire's first dolls, crooked, missing a button. "Uncle Daniel drew a new emotion," Ellie beamed. Daniel took the doll gently. "Might need some stitching, but the emotion's right." As the girls ran off, Claire leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. They did not speak. They did not need to. In that silence was everything. The hunger they had endured, the loneliness, the broken dreams, and the quiet miracle of choosing each other through it all. Not a fairy tale, but something better, a home, a family, built not by perfection, but by patience, not by blood, but by choice, not by wealth, but by the courage to begin again. And it had all started with a scrap of cardboard and a question whispered on a cold sidewalk. "May we have your left?" If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that love can come softly, without fanfare, that broken hearts can still create whole families, that sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to rewrite someone's life, then you are exactly where you are meant to be. Here at Soul Stirring Stories, we believe in tales that reach deeper than headlines. Stories that don't just entertain, but heal, uplift, and remind us we are not alone. If you want more stories like Claire and Daniel's, of resilience, unexpected connection, and the quiet power of choosing love, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. We have so much more to share with you. And until the next story finds you, stay soft, stay strong, and never stop believing in second chances.